All right. So let's dive into something I bet you're already an expert in.
Mm-hmm.
Those tiny humans who pretty much, uh, you know, rule our lives,
Yeah.
toddlers,
Yes.
and specifically like how to navigate discipline
Right.
without like losing our sanity. We're unpacking Janet Lansbury's No Dad Kids today. And I got to say, like the title alone
Oh, yeah.
was a sigh of relief.
It really is like a breath of fresh air, isn't it?
Totally.
Especially when you're, in the thick of it, those toddler years. And the book's foundation is actually rooted in the work of Magda Gerber, who she was Lansbury's mentor.
Oh, interesting.
And Gerber was like a pioneer in infant care.
Okay.
And her whole approach was about respecting babies as whole people from the very start.
Wow.
Sentient, aware, communicating from day one.
Okay. That's a game changer. Because if we're already seeing them as like these tiny thinking beings, it completely changes how we react when they decide to,
Right.
test every limit we have.
Yeah. So absolutely.
Which, let's be honest, happens at least 12 times before breakfast.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where Lansbury's central idea comes in. Toddler limit pushing. It's not only normal, it's essential to their development. It's not because they're quote unquote bad
Right.
or manipulative,
Right.
but because they're literally like figuring out how the world works and their place in it.
So it's like they're little scientists.
Yes.
Running experiments.
Yes.
But the lab is our living room.
That's right.
And the experiment involves dumping all the flour on the floor.
Exactly. And they're testing with hypotheses like, if I scream loud enough, will someone give me a cookie?
Oh, for sure.
Or if I throw my toy, does it always come back?
Yeah.
And, they're driven by this innate curiosity, but, their prefrontal cortex,
Right.
the part of the brain that helps with impulse control, it's still under construction.
Which explains why logic goes out the window when they really want that cookie.
Right.
So how do we decode what they're really trying to tell us through all the chaos?
Well, Lansbury breaks down, toddler motivations into 8 main reasons.
Yeah.
Rather than listing them all, maybe we can focus on a couple that often surprise parents.
Okay.
One is the need for emotional release.
So it's not always like a power struggle.
Right.
Sometimes they're just overwhelmed.
Right. Think about it. They experience these huge, complex emotions that they don't have the language for yet. So a tantrum, a meltdown, it can be their way of processing. And Lansbury even says that, trying to shut those emotions down too quickly can actually hinder their emotional development.
Wow. So we need to let them have those feelings in a safe way, obviously not letting them hurt anyone, but acknowledging that it's real for them.
Precisely. And another kind of surprising motivation is attention seeking, but not in a manipulative way. Like, they genuinely crave connection with us. And sometimes acting out is the only way they know how to get that, that focused attention.
Right.
Lansbury has this anecdote about a girl refusing to get in her car seat.
Oh, yeah. Familiar.
And the mom was getting more and more frustrated. But when she finally, firmly put her in, the girl said, "That's what I wanted you to do."
Wow.
It's like she needed that clear boundary.
Interesting.
And leadership to feel secure.
That's so eye-opening because we tend to think giving them tons of choices empowers them. But sometimes what they really need is for us to be the calm, steady captain steering the ship.
Exactly. And that brings us to kind of how we talk to them.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging their feelings.
Yeah.
Even when we don't agree with the behavior. So instead of "don't yell,"
right.
try "I see you're angry," but we don't shout in the house.
So it's validating their emotions.
Right.
While still setting that limit.
Yes. It's about respecting them as people. And this is where Lansbury's person-to-person discipline comes in.
Go ahead.
It's not about controlling them.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that both our needs matter. There's this great example in the book of a mom who, in the middle of her son's meltdown, decides to make herself a cup of coffee.
Go ahead.
She acknowledged her son's frustration, but also took care of her own need for a moment of peace.
Yeah.
It models self-care.
Right.
And shows him that, mom is a person too, not just a tantrum-fixing robot.
That's such a great visual, that robot image.
Yeah.
Because we do start to feel like that
We
sometimes.
absolutely do, and it's not sustainable.
No.
So how do we start shifting towards this person-to-person approach in practical ways?
Yeah.
Well, one of the biggest hurdles Lansbury addresses is our fear of saying no.
Oh, the dreaded no.
The dreaded no.
Like, we want to be these, like, fun, permissive parents.
Right.
But then end up feeling resentful and exhausted.
Right. It's a common trap. But Lansbury argues that no is actually a gift.
Interesting.
It gives kids a clear understanding of boundaries,
Okay.
helps them feel secure,
Right.
and ultimately makes them more cooperative.
Okay.
She tells the story of a mom whose son started constantly saying no after she had been trying to avoid using the word herself.
Oh, wow.
Lansbury's advice:
Yeah.
start offering him choices. It's like he needed to hear that no from his mom
Wow.
to feel comfortable wielding it himself.
It's like it gives them a framework
Right.
for understanding limits.
Yeah.
So how do we strike that balance
Right.
between, like, saying no when needed,
Yeah.
but also offering them that autonomy?
That's where Lansbury's 7 keys to cooperation come in. They offer a framework for creating a more cooperative dynamic rather than, constantly battling it out.
Right.
One of the most important keys is slowing down.
Okay.
We're often, rushing, multitasking.
Yeah.
And our toddlers pick up on that frantic energy.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
I'm like the queen of trying to do 10 things at once.
Right?
But I guess what you're saying is that if we're frazzled,
Yes.
they're going to mirror that.
Exactly. Lansbury emphasizes that when we approach interactions with our toddlers, with a calm, present energy, it can completely change the dynamic.
So it's about being, like, intentional.
Yes.
Even if it's just for, like, 5 minutes of focused playtime,
Yes.
rather than trying to, like, squeeze it in while
Yeah.
also cooking dinner and answering email.
Exactly. And another key is offering autonomy
Okay.
wherever possible.
Right.
This doesn't mean letting them run wild,
Right.
but giving them choices within the limits we've set. So instead of put your shoes on,
Right.
do you want the red shoes or the blue shoes?
Right.
It gives them a sense of control.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like they're constantly trying to, like, assert their independence.
Yeah.
So if we can give them, like, little pockets of it,
Yes.
maybe it'll, like, cut down on those power struggles.
Precisely. Lansbury has this great success story about a mom who was constantly, battling with her son over the spoon during meal times.
Oh, yeah. I've been that way.
He'd grab it, try to feed himself, make a mess. And Lansbury suggested she ask for the spoon, then offer it back with more food. And eventually he started willingly handing it back.
Wow.
And meal times became so much more peaceful.
Wow. It's like by respecting his desire to be, like, involved,
Yes.
she actually ended up teaching him how to participate
Right.
in a way that worked for both of them.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
But what about those times when, like, no matter how much we try to, like, offer choices or communicate clearly,
Right.
they just still don't listen?
Well, Lansbury has a whole chapter dedicated to, why directions often fail. And it's not always because toddlers are deliberately being defiant.
Right.
Sometimes it's as simple as our tone of voice conveying uncertainty.
Really?
Oh, kids are incredibly perceptive.
Interesting.
They pick up on those subtle cues.
So even if we're, like, saying the words,
Yes.
our body language might be screaming, I don't actually think you're going to do this.
Exactly. It's like we're subconsciously giving them permission to ignore us.
Yeah.
And then we get frustrated.
Right.
And end up, repeating ourselves a million times.
Yeah.
Another reason directions fail is if we're, constantly over-directing,
Okay.
not giving them enough space to, make their own choices.
Right.
And learn through exploration.
So it's back to that, like, balance
Yeah,
of boundaries and autonomy again.
exactly.
What about, like, those non-negotiables?
Right.
Those things we absolutely can't give them a choice about.
Right.
Like car seats
Right.
or running into the street.
Right. This is where when choices don't apply comes in. Lansbury stresses that sometimes, we have to be the firm decision makers,
Right.
even if it leads to a tantrum. She tells the story of a child who refused to enter a friend's house for a play date.
Okay.
And the mom was hesitant to, force the issue, but Lansbury advised her to be firm and follow through. It's about recognizing that our fear of upsetting our kids can sometimes lead to decisions that aren't actually in their best interest.
It's tough, though, right? Because we don't want to be those parents,
Yeah.
like dragging a screaming kid into a house.
Right.
But I guess what you're saying is that sometimes our job is to like hold that boundary,
Yes.
even if it's uncomfortable,
Right.
because it's ultimately about keeping them safe.
Yes. And Lansbury emphasizes that the way we handle these situations teaches our toddlers so much about how to deal with their own big feelings.
Interesting.
So if we model calm, confident leadership, they're more likely to learn those coping skills themselves.
So it's not just about like getting them to do what we want in that moment.
Right.
It's about like the bigger picture
Yes.
of helping them develop like emotional resilience.
Precisely. And that brings us to some of those specific behaviors
Yeah.
that often send parents running for the wine cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
Like whining.
Oh, the whining.
The whining.
It's like nails on a chalkboard.
It is, isn't it? But, Lansbury reframes it as simply another form of communication.
Okay.
A way for toddlers to express their needs when they don't yet have the words.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It's so easy to get annoyed,
Yeah.
and react harshly.
Yeah.
But Lansbury reminds us to see it as a cry for help.
Okay.
It could be fatigue, hunger, a need for connection, or even just a way of testing our limits.
So how do we respond in a way that doesn't make us want to like pull our hair out?
Well, Lansbury suggests that sometimes the best thing we can do is offer our undivided attention,
Oh,
even for a few minutes.
That's fine.
Put down the phone,
Right.
make eye contact, and really listen to what they're trying to communicate.
Right.
Even if it's through, a high-pitched whine.
Right.
She also emphasizes validating their feelings. So instead of stop whining,
Right.
I hear you're frustrated. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on.
It's like we're acknowledging their struggle,
Yes.
but not giving into the whining itself.
Exactly. And sometimes simply naming the emotion can help them to regulate it.
Oh, interesting.
It's like, oh, that's what this feeling is called. Now I don't have to whine about it anymore.
That makes so much sense
Yeah.
because they're still learning all these like complex
Right.
emotional nuances.
Yes.
Now, what about when the whining escalates into like full-blown sass?
Mhm.
Like the backtalk can be so frustrating.
It can be. Lansbury had a mom write in about her daughter suddenly, becoming a back-talking terror. And the mom was completely taken aback by it, Lansbury's advice.
Yeah.
Deactivate the button.
What does that mean?
Don't react in a way that gives the behavior power.
So it's like not taking the bait,
Right.
but instead like just letting those sassy comments like roll off our backs.
Yeah.
But how do you actually do that
Well,
when you're like in the moment
Right.
and your toddler's being a mini lawyer, like arguing about everything?
Well, Lansbury suggests responding with disarming phrases like, well, I guess we disagree, or thank you for your opinion. Okay. It's about not engaging in a power struggle, but also not letting them think that their rudeness is okay.
So like we're modeling respectful disagreement,
Right.
even when they're not quite there yet.
Right.
But what about those times when the emotions just explode into like a full-blown tantrum?
Well, Lansbury has a whole different take on tantrums than most parenting experts. Instead of viewing them as something to be stopped or controlled, she sees them as a healthy release of emotions.
Wait, so we shouldn't be trying to like make them stop crying or yelling?
Not necessarily. Lansbury's approach is about providing a safe space for those emotions to flow through them.
Interesting.
She tells the story of a girl, Lily, who was having a meltdown at snack time.
Okay.
And it turned out she was just stressed from having house guests.
Oh, wow.
And was totally overwhelmed. And Lansbury reminds us that kids are self-healing,
Yeah.
and our job is to support that process, not try to, shut it down. So instead of stop crying,
Yeah.
try, I'm right here with you. Let it all out.
It sounds like it's about like holding space
Yes.
for those big feelings.
Yes.
But also setting boundaries if the tantrum starts to get like destructive or hurtful.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance
Right.
between, empathy and limits.
Right.
But even when we're doing all the right things,
Yeah.
those moments of, frustration and doubt
For sure.
inevitably creep in.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Like, are we messing this up?
Yes. Are we doing enough? Are we even cut out for this whole parenting gig?
Oh, I think every parent has those moments of feeling like a total failure.
We do.
So what does Lansbury say about like those common discipline mistakes
Right.
we all tend to make?
Yeah, she highlights a few key ones that are really worth exploring. One of the biggest mistakes I think she points out is punishing children for their behavior.
Okay.
It's so ingrained in our culture.
Right.
But she argues that punishments,
Yeah.
whether it's yelling or timeouts or taking away privileges, actually backfire.
That goes against so much of what like we've been taught, you know?
It does.
Why does she think punishments don't work?
Because instead of teaching kids, why certain behaviors are wrong, punishments just make them afraid of the consequences. They might comply in the moment,
Yeah.
but it can damage their trust in us and make them less likely to cooperate, in the long run.
So it creates this like fear-based dynamic
Yes.
rather than one built on like understanding
Right.
and respect.
Yes.
What's another common mistake?
Labeling kids as bad.
Okay.
It seems harmless,
Right.
but when we say things like, you're being naughty or you're a bad boy for hitting, we're essentially defining them by their behavior.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Because kids are still like forming their sense of self.
Exactly.
So those labels can really like stick with them.
They can, and it doesn't address the underlying need that's driving the behavior.
Right.
And Lansbury reminds us that all behavior is communication. So instead of labeling the child, we need to try to understand the message that
Right.
it's trying to send.
So it's about shifting our perspective from like, how do I stop this behavior?
Right.
To what is my child trying to tell me?
Yes.
That's huge.
It really is. And it leads to a much more compassionate and effective approach to discipline. Lansbury calls it gentle leadership.
Okay.
It's about being in charge without being harsh or authoritarian.
Okay, I'm really intrigued by this idea. Like, how does gentle leadership actually play out in everyday life?
Well, it's about setting clear limits
Mhm.
and boundaries, but doing so with empathy
Right.
and understanding. It's about acknowledging their feelings, even when those feelings are difficult or uncomfortable.
Right.
You know.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Lansbury shares a story of a mom, Kelly,
Okay.
who was feeling like a complete failure.
Yeah.
Her daughter was constantly misbehaving and nothing seemed to work. And Lansbury helped Kelly realize that her daughter's behavior was a sign that she felt powerless. She needed her mom to step up and be a more confident leader. So instead of constantly giving in or getting into power struggles, Kelly started setting clear limits
Okay.
from the beginning.
Yeah.
And following through, calmly and consistently. It wasn't easy.
Right.
But over time, her daughter's behavior improved dramatically.
Wow. So it's about recognizing that kids actually thrive when they have those like clear boundaries.
Yes.
And know that we're the ones in charge.
Right.
Even if they don't like it in the moment.
Exactly. They might protest, they might tantrum, but deep down they want us to be the steady, confident captains of the ship.
Right.
And Lansbury's book is filled with these incredible success stories from parents
Yeah.
who were at their wits' end,
Right.
ready to give up, and then they stumbled upon her approach and saw these amazing transformations
Yeah.
in their kids and in themselves.
That's so inspiring. It gives me hope that even when things feel really tough,
Mm-hmm.
there are like tools and strategies
Yes.
we can use to make things better.
Absolutely. One of the most compelling stories is about Christine,
Okay.
who was literally crying at the kitchen table with her husband because their son's behavior was so out of control.
Wow.
And she started implementing Lansbury's techniques, being more intentional with her language, acknowledging his feelings, setting firm limits around screen time.
Okay.
And within days, she saw a huge shift.
That's amazing. What were some of the specific things that she did
Yeah.
that made such a difference?
Well, one of the most interesting examples is the airplane tactic.
Okay.
Her son kept kicking her laptop.
Oh, no.
And instead of, getting angry or yelling, she'd calmly stop him and say, "You want to kick my laptop, but I'm not going to let you do that."
Right.
And eventually he started extending his foot toward the laptop
Yeah.
and saying, airplane, waving his foot back and forth without actually kicking it.
Interesting.
It's like he found this creative outlet for his impulse.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's such a playful way to like acknowledge his desire
Right.
while still holding that limit.
Yeah.
It sounds like Christine's success really boils down to like consistency
Yes.
and clear communication,
Right.
which can be so hard when you're exhausted and feeling touched out.
It is definitely not easy, but that's why Lansbury emphasizes self-care so much.
Right.
You know, we can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
We need to take care of ourselves, you know, both physically and emotionally, so we can show up for our kids.
Right.
With patience and presence.
It's so true. We often feel guilty about like prioritizing our own needs.
Yeah.
But it's actually the best thing we can do for our kids.
Yeah.
So after like diving deep into Lansbury's approach, what are some of the key takeaways you think our listeners should like walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's remembering that there are no bad kids.
Right.
Just little humans who are learning and growing, often in messy
Right.
and chaotic ways. And their behavior is communication, and our job is to try to understand the message.
It's about shifting from seeing them as like adversaries
Yes.
to seeing them as allies,
Yeah.
even when they're driving us crazy.
Right.
And instead of focusing on controlling their behavior, we can focus on providing like clear boundaries,
Right.
and consistent leadership,
Right.
all while acknowledging their feelings and respecting them as individuals.
Exactly. And it's about remembering that we don't have to be perfect parents.
Right.
You know, we will make mistakes. We will lose our patience, and that's okay. What matters is that we keep learning, we keep growing, and we keep showing up for our kids with love and compassion.
That's such a beautiful reminder.
Yeah.
It's about progress, not perfection. And I think Lansbury's approach gives us the tools and the permission
Yes.
to embrace the messiness of parenthood
While
while still raising, kind, confident, and cooperative
yes.
little humans.
I couldn't agree more. And as we wrap up, I'd like to leave our listener with one final thought. Toddlers are these amazing little mirrors, reflecting back to us our own anxieties, our own insecurities, our own patterns.
Wow, yeah.
So as you navigate the ups and downs of discipline, take a moment to observe your own reaction.
Okay.
What are your triggers? What are your fears? What messages did you receive about discipline growing up?
Right.
By exploring those deeper layers, we can not only become more effective parents, but also heal those old wounds and break those generational cycles.
That's such a powerful insight. It's not just about changing our children's behavior. It's about transforming ourselves.
Yes.
In the process. Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's been eye-opening and inspiring, and I know our listeners will walk away with a renewed sense of hope
Good.
and purpose.
It's been my pleasure.